Have you ever had a memory so powerful that it stayed with you your whole life? A moment that shaped who you became, even though you never told anyone about it? Before we begin this journey, make sure you subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. And what is the first memory that made you feel something you could not explain? This is a story about memories, growing up and discovering that some feelings never really go away. No matter how many years pass by, the old wooden gate felt rough under my fingers as I stood there, frozen in place. 20 years had passed since I last stood in this spot, but my heart was beating fast, just like it did when I was a teenager. Through the garden ahead, I could see her. Mrs. Wilson was working among the flowers, just like she always had. The summer sun was hot overhead, and everything looked exactly the same as I remembered. Except now I was 37 years old instead of 17. When I was young, I spent every summer at my grandmother's house in this quiet neighborhood. The house next door belonged to Mrs. Wilson, a woman who seemed like the most interesting person in the world to my teenage mind. She was older than my mother but younger than my grandmother. She had long brown hair back then, and she spent hours working in her beautiful garden. I used to watch her from the window, pretending to read books while really just looking at her as she planted flowers and pulled weeds. My grandmother would laugh at me sometimes. She knew what I was doing, even when I thought I was being sneaky. She would say things like, "Why don't you go outside and play instead of sitting by that window all day?" But I never did. I was too shy, too scared that Mrs. Wilson would notice me watching her. Now, standing at the gate after all these years, I realized something funny. She had known all along. I pushed the gate open, and it made the same creaking sound I remembered. The noise made her look up from her work. Her hair was silver now, cut shorter than before. Lines creased her face where smooth skin used to be. But her eyes were the same, grey like storm clouds, sharp and alive. She stood up slowly, brushing dirt from her hands onto her dress. "I wondered if you would come back," she said. Her voice was deeper than I remembered, but it still made my stomach feel strange, just like when I was young. "Your grandmother's house has been empty for a while. I figured someone from the family would show up eventually." I nodded, not knowing what to say. My grandmother had passed away 6 months ago. The house was mine now, and I had come back to decide what to do with it. But standing there looking at Mrs. Wilson, I realized the house wasn't the only reason I had returned. "You look different," I said, then immediately felt stupid. Of course she looked different. 20 years had passed. She smiled a little. "So do you. Taller. Your face has changed. But your eyes are the same. You still have that look, like you are thinking about something you should not be thinking about." My face felt hot. Even after all these years, she could still make me feel like that awkward teenager. "Come help me with the garden," she said, turning back to her work. "These weeds grow faster than the flowers. I could use another pair of hands." I walked through the gate and knelt down beside her in the dirt. She handed me a small tool for digging, and we worked together without talking much. The sun was warm on my back. The smell of earth and flowers filled my nose. Every now and then, our hands would reach for the same weed, and our fingers would touch. Each time it happened, I pulled my hand back quickly, feeling embarrassed. After a while, she spoke again. "Your grandmother used to sit on her porch and watch us out here. She would tell me stories about you, how you were always the quiet one in the family, how you loved reading books, how you would sit by the window for hours." I stopped digging and looked at her. She was smiling, but there was something sad in her expression. "She knew you were watching me," Mrs. Wilson continued. "She thought it was sweet. A young boy having his first crush. She used to joke that I should wave at you, but I told her no. I thought it might embarrass you too much." "You knew?" I asked, shocked. "Even back then?" Of course I knew, she said. Women always know when someone is looking at them. We can feel it, even when we pretend not to notice. And you looked at me like I was something special. Like I mattered. I had not felt that way in a long time. I did not know what to say. For 20 years I thought my secret had been safe. But she had known all along. We kept working as the sun moved across the sky. She told me stories about the neighborhood, about the families who had moved away, about how quiet everything had become. She told me about her husband, who had died 10 years ago. She told me about her children, who lived in other cities now and rarely visited. As she talked, I realized something. She was lonely. Do you remember the cookies I used to make? She asked suddenly. Yes, I said, smiling at the memory. You would bring them to my grandmother's house. They tasted like cinnamon and sugar. I loved them. I know you did, she said. You would sneak into the kitchen when everyone was outside. You thought no one saw you taking 2 or 3 at a time. But I saw. I always saw you. I laughed, feeling embarrassed again. You noticed everything, did not you? Only the things that mattered, she said quietly. When we finished with the garden, the sky was starting to turn orange. Mrs. Wilson stood up and brushed the dirt off her dress. You must be thirsty, she said. Come inside. I will make us some tea. I followed her into her house. Everything inside looked old but clean. The same curtains hung in the windows. The same pictures decorated the walls. But the house felt empty, like it was missing the life that used to fill it. In the kitchen, she filled a kettle with water and put it on the stove. I sat at the table, looking at all the scratches and marks on its surface. I remembered this table from when I was young. My grandmother and Mrs. Wilson used to sit here drinking coffee and talking for hours. Mrs. Wilson poured tea into 2 cups and sat down across from me. Steam rose between us, making the air feel thick and warm. She looked at me for a long time without saying anything. Tell me something, she finally said. Do you still think about those summers? Do you still remember watching me from the window? I felt my heart beat faster. Yes, I admitted. I think about it more than I should. She nodded slowly, like she had expected that answer. I think about it too sometimes. Those were good summers. Your grandmother was alive. My husband was alive. The world felt smaller then, safer. And you were just a boy with a crush. It was innocent. Sweet. It did not feel innocent, I said quietly. Even then, I knew what I was feeling was complicated. I know, she said. I could see it in your eyes. That is what made it different. You were not just a child. You were becoming something else. And I like being noticed. Even by a boy too young to understand what he was feeling. The room felt smaller suddenly. The air felt heavier. I wanted to leave, but I also wanted to stay forever. I should not have said that, Mrs. Wilson said, looking down at her tea. Forgive me. Sometimes I forget how to talk to people. It has been so long since I have had real company. It is okay, I said. I understand. We drank our tea in silence. Outside, the sky grew darker. The streetlights came on, casting yellow light through the windows. Mrs. Wilson got up and brought out a tin of cookies. They were the same ones I remembered, round and golden brown, smelling like cinnamon. I still make them, she said, even though there is no one here to eat them most days. Old habits, I guess. I took a cookie and bit into it. The taste was exactly like I remembered, sweet and spicy and warm. For a moment, I was 17 again, sneaking cookies from my grandmother's kitchen. You smiled, Mrs. Wilson said, watching me. That is the first real smile I have seen from you today. These cookies taste like my childhood, I said. Good memories. I hope. The best ones. She smiled too. And for a second, I could see the younger version of her underneath the silver hair and wrinkled skin. She was still beautiful, just in a different way now. "Let us go sit on the porch," she said. "It is cooler outside now." We took our tea and cookies and went out to the front porch. The night air felt nice after the hot day. The smell of flowers drifted over from the garden. We sat on the steps, close enough that our arms almost touched. "I always loved evenings," Mrs. Wilson said. "During the day, you have to keep busy. You have to pretend everything is fine. But at night, you can be honest. The darkness makes it easier to say things you would never say in the light." I looked at her. In the dim light from the house, her face looked soft and gentle. "What do you want to say?" I asked Dot. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I want to say that I am glad you came back. I want to say that having you here today made me feel less alone than I have felt in years. I want to say that when you look at me, I remember what it feels like to matter to someone." She paused. "But saying those things feels selfish. You have your own life somewhere else. I should not burden you with my loneliness." "It is not a burden," I said. "You are kind to say that." We sat together as the sky turned completely dark. Stars appeared one by one above us. Our hands rested on the wooden step between us, so close that our fingers almost touched. Neither of us moved away. "Time is strange," Mrs. Wilson said. "When you are young, you think you have forever. Then suddenly you are old, and you realize how fast it all went. You look in the mirror and wonder who that old person is looking back at you. You wonder when you stopped being young. You wonder when people stop seeing you." "I see you," I said. She turned to look at me. "Do you? Or do you just see the memory of who I used to be?" "I see both," I said honestly. "I see the woman I remember, but I also see who you are now. And you are still beautiful." Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. She reached over and took my hand. Her skin felt cool and rough from working in the garden, but her grip was strong. "Thank you," she whispered. "You do not know how much I needed to hear that." We sat like that for a long time, holding hands in the dark. Eventually she said, "It is getting late, but I do not want this night to end. I do not want to go back inside to that empty house." "Then do not," I said. "We can stay out here as long as you want." She squeezed my hand tighter. "Tell me about your life. Tell me about the 20 years since I last saw you. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about college, about the jobs I had worked, about the cities I had lived in. I told her about the people I had loved and lost. I told her about the dreams I had when I was young, and how different my life had turned out. She listened to everything, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts, looking sad at the difficult parts. When I finished, she said, "You had a good life. Maybe not the one you imagined, but a good one. That is more than most people can say. What about you?" I asked. "Tell me about your last 20 years. Her smile faded. "My story is not as interesting. My husband got sick. He died slowly. My children grew up and moved away. I stayed here in this house, taking care of the garden, watching the neighborhood change. Some days I wonder if I even exist anymore. I feel like a ghost haunting my own life." "You are not a ghost," I said. "How do you know?" She asked. "Maybe I died years ago and just forgot to lie down." "Because I can feel you," I said, squeezing her hand. "Ghosts are not warm like you are." She looked at our joined hands. "You always knew the right things to say, even when you were young. Your grandmother told me you would grow up to be special." She was right. The night grew cooler. Mrs. Wilson shivered slightly, and I moved closer to her. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat like that, watching the empty street. "I should not ask this," she said quietly. "But will you stay here tonight? Not in my house, I mean. In your grandmother's house. I do not want to wake up tomorrow and wonder if this day really happened. If I know you are nearby, I will know it was real. I will stay, I said. She lifted her head and looked at me. Thank you. You are giving an old woman more comfort than you know. You are not old, I said. She laughed softly. Sweet boy. Always so sweet. Eventually, we both stood up. My legs felt stiff from sitting so long. Mrs. Wilson walked me to the fence between our properties. At the gate, she stopped and turned to face me. Will I see you tomorrow? She asked. Yes, I said. We can work on the garden again if you want. I would like that very much. She reached up and touched my face, her hand gentle against my cheek. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she pulled her hand away and stepped back. Good night, she said. Good night, Mrs. Wilson. Please, she said. Call me Sarah. I think we are past formalities now. Good night, Sarah. She smiled, then turned and walked back to her house. I watched her go inside before I walked over to my grandmother's house. Inside, everything was dusty and still. I found some old blankets and made a bed on the couch. As I lay there in the dark, I could see Sarah's house through the window. A light was on in one of the rooms. I wondered if she was looking back at me. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky pink and gold. I looked out the window and saw Sarah already in her garden. She was watering the flowers, moving slowly among the plants. Her silver hair caught the morning light and seemed to glow. I got dressed and went outside. When I opened my grandmother's gate, Sarah looked up. She smiled and waved. I walked over to her yard. You are up early, I said. Old people do not sleep much, she replied. Besides, I wanted to catch the morning light. It is the best time of day. Can I help? I asked. I was hoping you would offer. We worked together again, watering plants and pulling weeds. As we worked, we talked about simple things, about the weather and the flowers and the birds singing in the trees. It felt comfortable, natural, like we had been doing this together for years. After a while, Sarah sat down on the grass to rest. I sat beside her. The ground was still cool from the night, and the grass was wet with dew. I did not sleep well last night, Sarah said. I kept thinking about what you said, about how you still see me, about how I am still beautiful. I wanted to believe it, but it is hard. When you get to my age, people stop looking at you. You become invisible. It is like you already died, but your body forgot to stop moving. I meant what I said, I told her. You are beautiful, Sarah, not just because of how you look, because of who you are, because of the way you care for these flowers, because of the way you remember things, because you are still here, still trying, still living. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. Sorry, she said. I do not usually cry. I must be getting soft in my old age. It is okay to cry, I said. She looked at me with those grey eyes. You remind me why life is worth living. Even the hard parts. Even the lonely parts. Because sometimes, if you are lucky, someone comes along and reminds you that you matter, that you are seen. I did not know what to say, so I just took her hand again. We sat there in the morning sunshine, holding hands like old friends, while the garden bloomed around us. Over the next few days, I stayed at my grandmother's house and spent every day with Sarah. We worked in the garden together. We cooked meals. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told me stories about her life, about her childhood, about her dreams when she was young. I told her more about my life too, about my fears and hopes and regrets. One evening, we were sitting on her porch again. The sun was setting, making everything glow orange and red. Sarah was quiet, looking out at her garden. You will have to leave soon, will not you? She asked. I had been dreading this question. Yes, I admitted. I have to go back to work. I have responsibilities. She nodded. I knew this could not last forever, but I wanted to pretend for a little while longer. I do not want to leave, I said, and I meant it. But you will, she said. And you should. You have your whole life ahead of you. I had mine already. This week, these days with you, they are a gift. A beautiful, unexpected gift. But gifts are not meant to last forever. They are meant to be treasured while you have them, then remembered after they are gone. I will remember, I said. So will I, she said. Every day. For the rest of my life, however long that is, I will remember the week when I did not feel invisible. When someone looked at me and saw not just an old woman, but a person. A human being who still has worth. We sat together until the stars came out. Then I walked her to her door. When do you leave? She asked. Tomorrow morning, I said. She nodded. Then tonight is our last night. I suppose it is. She looked up at me, and I could see she was trying not to cry. Thank you, she said. For coming back. For seeing me. For making me feel alive again. Thank you for letting me in, I said. For sharing your garden and your stories and your time. She hugged me then, holding on tight like she was afraid I might disappear. I hugged her back, feeling how small and fragile she was in my arms. When she finally pulled away, she was smiling through her tears. Goodbye, she whispered. Goodbye, Sarah. I watched her go inside. Then I walked back to my grandmother's house. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Sarah alone in her house, about how she would wake up tomorrow, and I would be gone. I thought about how she had given me something precious this week, and I wondered if I had given her anything nearly as valuable. In the morning, I packed my car and took one last walk around my grandmother's property. Then I went over to Sarah's house to say goodbye properly. But when I got there, she was already in the garden, working among her flowers. She was wearing the same dress, kneeling in the same spot where I had first seen her when I arrived. I stood at the gate, watching her just like I had done when I was 17. She must have felt me there because she looked up. Our eyes met and she smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a grateful one. I thought about coming to say goodbye, I called out. But I think this is better. Seeing you here, where you belong, where you are happiest. It is better this way, she agreed. Goodbyes are always harder than hellos. Will you be okay? I asked. I will be fine, she said. I have been alone for many years. I know how to survive it. And now, I have new memories to keep me company. Memories of you, memories of this week. They will keep me warm on cold nights. I wanted to say more, but I did not know what words would be enough. So instead I just waved. She waved back. Then I got in my car and drove away. As I drove down the street, I looked in my mirror. Sarah was still in her garden, bent over her flowers, her silver hair shining in the morning light. She looked small and alone, but also somehow strong. Like she would be okay. Like she would survive whatever came next. I carried that image with me as I drove away. I carried it for days, weeks, months. Whenever I felt lost or lonely, I would think about Sarah in her garden, caring for her flowers, refusing to give up, refusing to disappear. A year later, I got a letter. It was from Sarah's daughter. She wrote to tell me that Sarah had passed away peacefully in her sleep. She wrote that in Sarah's final weeks, she had talked constantly about a visitor she had, about a young man who had come back after many years and reminded her why life was worth living. She said Sarah had seemed happier in those last weeks than she had been in years. The daughter also wrote that Sarah had left me something in her will. It was a tin of cookies, baked just before she died, with a note attached. The note said, for the boy at the window who grew up but never stopped seeing me. Thank you for the gift of being remembered. Love, Sarah. I keep that note with me always. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still see her in that garden, surrounded by roses and sunshine, smiling like she has a wonderful secret. In my memory, she is not old or young. She is just Sarah, beautiful and alive and real, forever working among her flowers, forever reminding me that everyone deserves to be seen, to be noticed, to matter. That is what I learned that summer when I went back to my grandmother's house. I learned that we all become invisible eventually. Time steals our youth, our beauty, our place in the world. But sometimes, if we are very lucky, someone comes along and really sees us. And in that moment of being truly seen, we are alive again. We are real again. We matter again. Sarah taught me that. And I will never forget her. The end.